On October 17, 1982, Michelle Basil is 13 years old and at home when the phone rings. At the other end of the line, her sister Kim.
And she just said that she was in trouble and she needed to come home. She was standing in the shower, so no one would know she was on the phone.
Kim Basil's family has not heard from her for several days before Michelle can question Kim as to why the conversation is cut short.
And then someone came in and found out she was on the phone, and they started to violently beat her. And the phone dropped, but it didn't disconnect. And then they started burning her with cigarettes. I could hear it, begging them to stop burning her. I just listened as long as I could, and then finally someone hung the phone up.
In 1982, Michelle is barely a teenager and badly frightened. She tells her mother about the phone call and about Kim.
I contacted the police, and they told me I had to wait the 2 weeks to file a missing person. They considered her a 19-year-old runaway. She was an adult until they had something proving that she was gone. It really was very little investigation.
Runaway or murder victim, the fact is Kim Basil has disappeared and is still missing a year later, when a local drug sting produces an arrest and then an informant.
This person had heard that Kim had been killed and went on to tell me that Esther Benita Cahoot and John Santmeyer were two of the people that were involved in killing Kim. The group that we're talking about, the older participants, were constantly setting up crimes, using younger people so that if someone got caught, it wouldn't lead to their arrest. They were very good at it. These families were infamous since the first day I came on the police bureau in the late 60s. It's just a way of life with them.
According to Goodale's informant, at the time she disappeared, Kim Basil was Danny Longoria's girlfriend and had been used by the family in a massive shoplifting scam.
I think at one point during this investigation, the store informed me that they believe they may have lost up to $250,000 worth of merchandise before they had figured this out. They set up a surveillance with video surveillance and captured this on film.
Caught by security cameras, Kim Basil was looking at possible jail time, and according to the informant, reportedly asked the Longoria family for protection.
She told them, "You need to help me, and if you don't, I'm going to go to the police and I'm going to tell them about your cocaine trafficking, the safe burglary, and these thefts from Fred Meyer." Wrong thing to say to these people. We knew she was with some very bad people and young and somewhat naive and probably in over her head.
Goodale believes the family viewed Kim Basil as a potential informant and decided to get rid of her. In November of 1983, he sits down with Linda Estes, a detective from neighboring Clackamas County, and a woman familiar with the Longoria family. Estes and Goodale decide to approach Danny Longoria and see if he will roll over on his cousin Esther or his crony John. It's something the Longoria family is famous for.
They like to tape record other criminals and use that for barter should they ever be arrested. And instead of going to jail, they wanted to trade something.
Danny Longoria does not disappoint. The moment he hears the name Kim Basil, Longoria proclaims his innocence. In the next breath, he agrees to a police wiretap.
He agreed to make some tape-recorded phone calls to the suspects in the case and to any witnesses in the case that might have information.
Longoria first calls on Esther Cahoot.
Lawyer, said that I killed that broad and that you had the police
That's
believed
a story. That's a story, swear to God. That's an absolutely made-up story. You have nothing to worry about. You did absolutely nothing. I mean, I have no contact with you or nothing.
That's not the point. I don't want them to put a bum beef on you, man.
Esther isn't talking, even to her cousin Danny. Then more stories begin to surface about Kim Basil and a wood chipper.
We heard rumors on the street that her body had been run through a wood chipper.
Joe Goodale and I did some follow-up investigation in regards to that.
And interviewed the owner of this wood chipper and looked over the grounds. And I mean, I could envision finding pieces of body parts that have been through a chipper out here. We never did, thank goodness.
Fargo Revisited never gets a chance to play in the Great Northwest. Instead, Goodale and Estes come up with exactly nothing. No body, no evidence, and no one in the family willing to talk. At least, not yet. On a winter afternoon, Detective Gary Muncy sits across from John Santmeyer, an alleged member of the Longoria crime family, now sitting in jail on a probation violation. Santmeyer has asked for the meeting and wants to talk about the 1982 murder of 19-year-old Kim Basil.
There was perhaps a crack in the foundation of this group of people, and he was privy to that, and he wanted to get his word in first, probably to benefit himself.
What I do remember, the night, I'm not sure of the night that it was. I was awakened by Esther.
Esther is Esther Cahoot, Danny Longoria's cousin and second in command in the Longoria operation. John Santmeyer lives with Esther and her 3 sons.
She had asked me to help move the body, for which she had already called her brother and her son, which is Roy and John, and she had showed me the body, for which down toward the lower part of the body, which would have been the groin area, was a big wet spot to where I automatically assumed that she was dead already.
He said that Esther, Roy, and John, and himself had carried her out of the house in the sleeping bag, stepping over other kids that were asleep on the floor, out through the garage, into the back of the pickup truck, and that Roy and John left in that truck with the body in the back of the truck.
And from there, I had went back to sleep, and that was that.
Muncy isn't buying Santmeyer's limited role in the crime, but before he can charge anyone, he'll need more evidence, including a body. 2 weeks later, detectives forge a second crack in the Longoria family. This time, it's Esther Cahoot's nephew, Benny Manaz, who is arrested on a charge of attempted murder and seems more than willing to trade in his aunt for a deal from the DA.
When Benny came forward, it really enlightened me a little bit, because what he was telling us was about this property that his aunt owned, and that through the years, he heard rumors of a young girl that was murdered and put in the property somewhere.
I heard him talking to somebody on the phone about property up in Friend that my mom and dad was selling. That's how I knew that she was going to be moved up to there. I was the one that dug that hole.
Did you dig it for this reason?
No.
Why'd you dig it?
For an outhouse. I thought that it was going to be used for a grave.
And Benny drew a map to the location where he believed the body was.
The land Benny describes is in a remote area outside Portland. Gates procures a search warrant and heads out, looking for the body of Kim Basil.
We knew from the very beginning that Kimmy was in a sleeping bag, and we cut just a corner of the bag and saw what appeared to be a human bone.
Dental records prove that the body is that of Kim Basil. It is left to Michael Gates to contact the victim's family and let them know, after 16 years, what happened to Kim.
There were several people that we talked to that felt that they would end up the same way as Kimmy did if they talked.
When Mike first came up and spoke to me, I was in this mentality to where you're not supposed to talk to police officers, you're not supposed to say nothing no matter what.
Frank is a cousin in the Longoria family and just out on bail when Michael Gates approaches him.
He asked me if he could talk to his girlfriend and get back to me.
I go home and I speak with my wife and we start talking, and she tells me to do what he thinks right.
And the next day I went back and he wanted to sit down and interview with me, and I taped the interview.
I was drinking with this associate, John Santmeyer, and he was a little intoxicated, and he started talking about how he smothered her.
He says, I smothered her with a pillow on a couch.
When you say her, how did you know it was Kim?
He said her name. He said that he smothered Kim on the couch at my aunt's home, and that she was fighting for air, and he said he took her to the mountains and put her in a pre-dug hole.
Frankie was another piece of the puzzle. He was polygraphed as to what John Santmeyer talked to him about, and he passed with flying colors.
On March 19, 2000, John Santmeyer is arrested for the murder of Kim Basil. Gates, however, is not yet satisfied. He believes Esther Cahute, second in command of the Longoria family, was intimately involved in the crime.
I wanted anybody that was involved in this case in prison, and we knew she was involved. I just couldn't prove it at the time.
Inside the county jail, investigators turned the screws on John Santmeyer. Police believe Santmeyer and Cahute had beaten and tortured Kim for hours. According to Santmeyer, Kim was tied up in a sleeping bag when he and Esther decided to kill her.
Esther had come up to me and said, "Hey, let's just do it this way." She's in the sleeping bag. She brought me into the front room, showed me Kim was in the sleeping bag, all zipped up. The only part that was shown was her head.
And he showed me how he held her down until Kimmy stopped struggling.
And there was such a struggle with it that during the portions of the time where Kim kept saying, "I won't tell, I won't tell, I won't tell," I said, "Esther, I can't do this." So we switched spots. And I didn't sit on her arms while Esther sat on her face with the pillow. I basically just grabbed around her so she couldn't move around.
And when she stopped struggling, they held it down for a couple more minutes to make sure she was dead.
Why did Esther want Kim dead?
To show off Danny on that, you know, hey, when you know it's done, I can do this, you know, hey.
Esther Cahute is indicted for first-degree murder. She pleads guilty to manslaughter and is sentenced to 9 years. John Santmeyer pleads guilty to murder 1 and receives a sentence of life with the possibility of parole after 10 years.